We're going to be talking. I hope you guys had a good weekend. I was sort of out of DFS world for the weekend, and even my golf lineups were kind of following in suit because they weren't really very live either. For a little bit on Saturday, it looked like I was going to have some chances, and it just was an ugly golf weekend. Didn't play any MLB DFS. Was incredibly impressed by what I saw from just Miami. I can't get over this team. I mean, it's just amazing what they're doing. And I'm not surprised about what's happening in the Denver LA series. Unfortunately, I'd like to see the Lakers fight back a little, but I don't know if we're going to see that. And that was my sports weekend. Sheets, you had some much more exciting stuff going on.
Yeah, so I was away, but I was able to play anyway. Couple of things. First of all, for those of you that didn't catch us on our live stream and in the Discord, I gave out the Preakness winner in fine style.
Oh, nice.
At one, and I mentioned it. I'm literally on air to you, and you said thank you very much. And I guess I put in the Discord channel, and I guess only nobody bet it. I don't know, but National Treasure did in fact win as like 4-1 or something like that.
Yeah,
it could have been more if a horse that had no chance didn't get scratched, making our price lower. In addition to that, I did actually get third in like the MLB lottery, like on Friday or something like that, for like $5K, which is kind of fun. And then the fun part was the MMA. This thing I've been tracking for like months now. Like I won my seat into the World Championship qualifier. It must have been like 5 months ago. They finally got it down to 100 people, and so they played off like 3 weeks ago, and it got from 100 down to 40, and I got through that. And then last week was the last one before the live final. They played from 40 down to 15, and I fought off all these parentheses guys. And I got there. I spent like freaking forever on my lineup, and I went with it and kind of qualified pretty easily actually. And so I made the live final in Jacksonville, which is going to be on June 24th. Now it remains to be seen whether I can actually make it, but I could definitely be playing it. But that's all really exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really pumped for you.
And as far as the golf goes, pretty. Listen, I was pretty happy with my call on Victor Hovland. I had him outright to win. You know,
he had a real chance.
And I had him at Listen, and DeChambeau I thought was a pretty good call. He played nicely right into the final groups. And I just couldn't get enough guys to make the cut. I ended up with a miracle 20-footer from Hovland at the end to min cash in the 4 whatever. But overall, I mean, I think it was a pretty. Listen, it was a good like equity weekend for me because that MMA thing is like giving me a carload of equity. As far as actual money made, it was a pretty poor week for me overall. I mean, like pretty much the whole week. So I'm ready to get back into it. Yesterday, literally on the plane, I put in some lineups. I did give out Texas as my top stack yesterday. They scored 1 million runs, so I cashed in the
nice
yesterday. But I'm ready to get after it today.
All right, me too. Let's jump into it. We'll pull up your screen and go game by game here. There's a lot of. Well, it's a small slate, but there's certainly
it's Coors, so
it's going to be all Coors. So we just know that we can basically take shots at most other places and not worry as much about ownership because I think Coors is going to be crazy owned. All right, let's show you the Dodgers Atlanta first. I guess I'll jump in on this one really quick. I'm not in love with this game for the Dodgers from a hitting perspective. I do have respect still for Morton. It is a spot where I think they certainly would be viable, but Morton's been like really good. And in tough matchups, he's been really good. You also have 10-mile-an-hour winds coming in from left field. It is a big stadium upgrade for the Dodgers in general. I would say if you're going to play anybody on either side in this game, I would definitely try to look more towards the lefties. Unfortunately, you only have like you have the bottom of the order, but 2 towards the top for Atlanta, because I do think Atlanta is going to be another team that gets owned today. And Stone is, had up and down numbers in the minors, but it was playing in the PCL, so they're a little wonky. I do, all this to say that I have Atlanta like as an outside looking in stack as completely. I mean, they're completely viable, but I just don't think I'm going to end up with them most likely. I think I'm going to go a different direction today. I actually thought they'd be a little more popular than they're showing up to be early on. So maybe I reconsider that. If I was going to play them, I would probably try to focus on the lefties, like I mentioned, just because of the wind blowing in. But I'm probably a little lower on the hitting in this game than maybe the field is going to be.
I'm not getting to either pitcher here, at least this hour. As far as the hitting goes, I think I have 3 teams which seem like natural pivots off of Miami, which we'll get to. And Atlanta is one of them. So, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's not going to be particularly earth-shattering news. People are going to look to either play Miami or for logical pivots, and Atlanta is certainly going to be one of the logical ones. It is the one game that at least has a modicum of weather risk.
Yeah,
we don't know what it is, exactly yet, but that is something to monitor. I
think it's probably going to be okay, but I hear you.
Yeah, so I'll continue to monitor it. That's it.
Yep. All right. Well, let's jump over to the next one, which is Detroit KC. Why don't you jump off on this one?
Yeah. So this is an opportunity, I think, to play Brady Singer. We've been fiddling around with opportunities to play him all year with varying degrees of failure. There was one slate where somebody actually won the big one with him with like 15 fantasy points. And listen, if you're gonna play him, this is the time to play him. I mean, home against Detroit. I think he's probably going to get owned, but early ownership is not that bad. Early ownership like 15% or something like that. So I definitely think that he's very, very logical on this slate. And yet, on the other hand, I do have Detroit rating as a good value stack. So that's what I kind of like. I do like Singer, and I do like. Do I like Detroit? Not really. I don't know. But they're good. That's one of those teams that I would just play. But I kind of would rather play Singer than Detroit. If that makes any sense. So that's where I'm kind of at in this game.
Yeah, I think that, I don't think it's going to be crazy ownership, but he's definitely going to get some today. But I'm fine with it. I don't know that you really need the savings off of the top guys today. I don't really know what else it's really getting for you. So that's the only argument maybe against it. I think this whole game has both sides of the hitting are somewhat interesting. I also would look out for, the starting lineups are going to be important because like a guy like Badu, who's been batting seventh, he's crushing the ball. They might just move him up to leadoff before we know it. But they're really cheap, both sides. And I think both stacks have some viability. You're not taking the best, hitters in the world, but they're affordable. There is some talent there at the top of the Detroit lineup with Riley Green and McKinstry. Torkelson's a cheap first base option. Pascantino, Perez on the other side, and Bobby Witt and Melendez, all kind of interesting. So I could certainly see getting to both of these teams as stacks. They're on my list. I have them not as my favorite, but they're right there. I have them actually ahead of Atlanta, both of these potential stacks. A little more on the KC side, which always feels kind of gross. But I did want to mention I do think both these hitting things are very, very, I'm very okay with both of them. Put it that way. And Joanne just popped in. Good afternoon, Joanne. Hopefully next week golf will be a little bit better. And let's talk about Houston, Milwaukee, Sheets. What do you got here?
Yeah, so you got two of the best three pitchers on the slate in this game, Burns and Javier. I can't separate them when you factor in the price of Burns. So I have them both literally equal as far as my value rankings. I have them both ranked exactly equal as far as ownership goes as well. So I really can't really separate them. I think the majority of builds are going to be some combination of Castillo with Burns, Castillo with Javier, Burns with Javier, whatever it is. So I have nothing really to say except I would probably avoid the hitting, and both these pitchers are probably good plays.
Yep. I have it pretty clearly at the moment as I don't know if I buy the early ownership projections here. I just having a hard time understanding how people playing Burns against Houston versus playing, Javier against. Javier's more consistent. Milwaukee strikes out more. They're a weaker offense. Actually, to be honest, they have a little bit of pop too. But I have Javier as being the better play. But I am also going to mix in some Burns, and I have Javier as the second best pitcher on the slate, and I have Burns as the third best, like you mentioned. But I could see this going badly. And one thing I like about it for Javier, and you could say the same thing for Burns, is that they haven't really faced these guys before in the major leagues just because they don't play very often. So I think it should benefit both pitchers, and I think both are very, very solid. I'm a little higher on Javier than Burns, but I think that they're certainly both good options, and along with Castillo, that is gonna be the chalk pairing. So
Yeah.
anything else will get off of it a little bit. San Fran and Minnesota. I actually I've had another game pulled up. Do you mind jumping on it?
Yeah, I think that that Ober is in play. I really didn't think he'd be as highly owned. At least, well, this is early. I mean, I didn't think he'd be 20%. So maybe he won't be. I just feel it's just so easy to play those other three pitchers that everybody except for Castillo, Birds, and Javier is just going to not be owned. That's so. I think over 20%, it doesn't even exist. I think it's more like 10 or 12. And I think it's fine again. But I go back to when I was starting to make the case for Singer, you were like you were kind of asking rhetorically, what do you really need him for? And I guess that is a pretty valid point. I guess I would say it's not a question you need him. I think maybe you just sort of have to have somebody lower owned just to kind of make some hay out of your lineup. I don't think you necessarily need to use those pitchers to get to other hitting, but just to take you a different form of construction, I guess. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I guess Ober is fine. I'm pretty sure he had a good against the Dodgers, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe. Yeah. I think he's reasonable. I'm not getting to the Manaea off the long relief thing, and I'm not getting to either hitting situation either. So probably Bailey Ober play, which is going to end up being poor, and that's about it.
Yeah, I actually Ober's been really consistently solid, so I don't mind it against the Giants, who still strike out a ton, which is kind of different than most of the old Giants teams. I don't know what to do because I kind of want to play some Minnesota here.
All right.
If it is going to be Manaea, but I don't know how long they're going to let Manaea go, and are we going to see just like the 1 inning or 1 or 2 innings from Brebbia, then 1 or 2 innings, then 1 or 2 that's not something I really want to stack against. So maybe not as a full stack. I find myself getting to it more on FanDuel just because I don't really want to play 5 of them, but I do like the top 4: Gallo, Correa, Kirilloff, and Buxton. And I'm just curious what they do with Manaea if they're going to let him it's just weird with the lefty off the. I'm actually just curious what their lineup is going to actually look like today. Maybe they do something totally crazy and actually bat Michael Taylor near the top of the order. So I do have the Twins. It's kind of interesting. It is 80 degrees in Minnesota, and I think that's a positive bump up for both teams. While Ober's been consistent, I'm just going to point out, even though I'm probably not getting them as a stack, all of the Giants lefties should be heavily in play here. They're all cheap. You've got a huge stadium upgrade because you're playing in 80-degree weather in Minnesota rather than 50-degree weather in San Francisco. And they're all, Conforto, Haniger, not even just the lefties, I guess. Conforto, Haniger, Yaz, Lamont, and Wade. All those guys, I think, are totally in play. I just didn't find them as priorities personally. All right. Now we get to the Colorado game sheet. So I'm going to ask you, what are you going – I'll just say this right now. The super crazy, get weird play for me, which I probably won't put it in any tournament of any substance, and I probably won't even do it because he did have he has the blister developing. I think Cabrera is going to be is the kind of guy who you're going to see him have some really just awesome performances against good teams. He's going to be high variance in his pitching style in general, but he does have a ceiling. He's the get weird pitcher for me. I don't know how much I'll end up with of him, but I am considering him. And I also think that obviously these are the two best, the two on paper best stacks on the slate. You're going to have less ownership on Colorado than you do on Miami, as always. Their visiting team is always getting the bump. I am higher on Miami, and I'm going to play Miami as a mini stack mostly. I'm not going to get to any full Miami stacks. There's no way. But I will play like a 3-man or something like that. I have no problem with that. And I even think if you get an unowned 4-man on FanDuel, you could pair either Colorado or Miami and not have to worry about getting so far off the board. But I prefer Miami, and particularly Soler, little Garrett Hampson revenge for you. Depending on how their lineup shakes out, but if we do get a lineup with John Birdie in it, he will definitely be in my lineups. He was in my first build. I think that Chase Anderson, he can run on him too. So there's a stolen base upside there. So I obviously I like this game, but I'm just not going to play a 30% owned stack basically ever. I do think Colorado might be low owned enough to where you could start considering them as a stack, though. Sort of going back and forth on that one. What do you got here?
I mean, Rates is the best stack on the slate, and the highest owned. This is going to be a common theme in pretty much all these road teams at Coors all season. One thing I'll notice as far as pricing goes, which is interesting, the exception of Birdie, I mean, everybody's either like healthily priced or really cheap. Like there's nothing really in between. Like you have all these guys over 5K, and then you go down to like De La Cruz and Hampson, and there's like a 2,500 guy who's going to be really popular. Yeah, the Burdick at 2,600. And if Wendell gets in at 2,600, you know what I mean? So that, I guess it's something interesting to note is that they're real cheapos and there's kind of expensive guys. I will just say this: if you go ballistic and play, all the Miami, I mean, Chase Anderson was completely unhittable in his first game in Colorado. I shouldn't say unhittable, but 5 innings pitched, one hit, 1 walk. I mean, what else do you want from the dude? And they only let him pitch 59 pitches. How sick is that, right?
I don't know if he's got a leash anymore.
Probably not. I mean, but this is the game. This is the game that ended up like 3-1 when everybody played Cincinnati. Yeah, I kind of am into the Cabrera idea a little bit. I mean, it's really got everything you want. Like it's in Colorado. You got this little Red Cross thing. You know what I mean? With might keep his ownership down a little bit. But guy definitely has a ceiling. And he gets Colorado guys striking out. I mean, he could. I mean, I don't know if he'll outscore the top guys, but who knows? I mean, I think he's got a better chance to outscore the top guys than Bailey Ober at the same price. So yeah, I mean, I'd be into taking some shots on Cabrera. As far as what I'm going to do with Miami, I mean, look, the same thing as before. I don't think I'm going to play any Miami stacks with the combinations of Castillo, Javier, and Burns. But I might do something like a Singer-Ober combination or something like that. You know what I mean? With the expensive Miami guys, maybe do something like that to get a little, but that's like really the only way, kind of like you, that I would play like a full Miami stack. It's just wait. We don't get to theory as much as maybe we should, but the idea is that yes, Miami's the best play, and yes, those pitchers are the best plays. But if you play all these, especially if you play like the lottery, you're putting so much pressure on yourself to be perfect with your lineup. Yeah. Because everybody else is going to be shuffling these same combinations, and it's just really, really difficult. So I'd rather do something like I said, maybe exactly like this, maybe Singer Ober, or a little sneaky correlation. Maybe get Singer Cabrera or something like that, and then you can play Miami. But I would play the other 3 good pitchers with Miami.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know how much I'll end up with of them, but I do think that the Cabrera is, kind of interesting. All right, what do you got in the? I guess I'll start off this one.
Yeah, you did the first one. Yes.
So LA and Boston. I don't know if I'm going to do almost anything in this game.
Oh, really? You don't like the Boston side, huh?
No.
Okay.
I don't like Boston outside of Boston. They're extremely slanted towards being better at home. This is a huge downgrade for them. They have all these guys who don't have any power except for in Boston, outside of Devers. You know what I mean? So I'm not interested in a bullpen stacking for Boston. I'm not interested particularly in the Angels, although I would lean a little more towards that side than I would towards Boston. Pieces, fine. I'm just not getting to it. And I like that I'm not, because I do think that this will be the next most popular situation. I think Ohtani is going to be extremely popular, and I think that Devers is going to be extremely popular. We'll see by the end of the day. Maybe if you want to use Cassis as a cheap option at first, I don't mind that. But I do think this will be the next most owned spot, and I will probably be avoiding it.
Yeah, watch the lineup, obviously, for Boston. Turner didn't play on Sunday. So I don't know if Justin Turner is going to play or not. I do have Boston as one of the 3 natural pivots off of Coors. Turner, if he played, I would like. Then there's Duran, I like. Verdugo, and I would start with those, I guess. But yeah, I mean, Boston, as you mentioned, I mean, they're much better in Boston, as most teams are. Most teams are better in Boston. But I think Boston's okay here. I don't like any of the pitching, and I do not like the Angels as far as hitting goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep an open mind to Boston because there's not a whole lot that I like on this slate, but I'm probably not going to play like an incredible amount of lineups either. So if I was, I would certainly get to some portion of them.
So I guess for this last game, I mean, I'll start with this. I guess the first question is for Eric Johnson: how much Oakland is too much Oakland? So Seattle, okay, so both sides of this for Seattle, actually. So Castillo looks like the best play from a projection perspective. He has a good matchup. He's got good metrics. He's got pretty much good everything. And he's going to be, very, very highly owned. And I guess Seattle is going to be a very, very natural stack as well, to not play Coors. And I guess they're going to get owned to some degree. And then I have them. Boy, you're right. It's so funny. I didn't realize the Angels were getting such high ownership. I don't think I need to play them really.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer Seattle to the Angels. As a matter of fact, I can't imagine the Seattle being less popular than the Angels. They're playing freaking Muller, right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I think Seattle's pretty obvious actually, and we have to double check the ownership here. I have Seattle as for me. I don't want to say clearly, but pretty close to clearly my best, non-core stack. I don't know. So I like all these Seattle guys. Same guys that we always play. And now we get to actually play the righties. Against the lefty. Right. So yeah, I like all the Seattle guys, and I like Castillo.
Yeah, I'm very interested in Seattle. I also think that there's like another one of their teams that sometimes gets the lineups in a little bit late. So if you avoid like if the lineup comes out right before the first game, because I do think there's some questions as to who's going to play for Seattle. Like you might see Pollock out there. Raleigh's questionable, so it might be Tom Murphy. You know what I mean? So just keep an eye out for you'd want to know the Seattle lineup.
Yeah, but you get these four righties here like this that I put in here: France, Suarez, Julio Rodriguez, and Hernandez. I mean, this is I think it's a good start.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I'm also gonna, because of the ownership getting a little bit higher, I'll probably play Caballero at the bottom of the order and in my stacks, and I'll probably play AJ Pollock.
If he gets in, sure. I mean,
well, I can't imagine he wouldn't, and he's only on the team to play against lefties. So it would be a very strange thing if he didn't. I would question whether or not he's being traded if he wasn't. So I do have Seattle as the top team that I'll have ownership of today. And I like Castillo. I just want to point out, it's kind of interesting because the early projections have him at like 50%.
Yeah.
In big buy-in stuff, he's going to be like 70%. It's going to be maybe higher.
Yep.
Just want to point out that he hasn't really been great lately. He's had one good start out of his last 6. And maybe just, you do with that what you will, but like there's not a ton of options on the slate. I just think that he'll probably be in my biggest buy-in on DraftKings, and I probably will fade him on FanDuel, but I probably won't play him in a ton of my lineups on DraftKings other than my big buy-in as of right now. I just feel like it just feels too small. Like it's a small slate. The ownership's going to be a little bit higher than I don't even think it should be. It's just going to be really high. And if you wanted to, I would certainly not be looking to stack Oakland. But if you wanted to take a one-off or something from that game, you're going to get like no ownership on any of the Oakland guys. And we'll see where Langoliers ends up. But Ruiz can always steal a base. Rooker's got power. Laureano has power and some speed upside, although he hasn't been running as much this year. Noda's cheap. So if you want to take, or JJ Bleday, any of these guys are viable as one-offs. I just want to throw that out there because it is a small slate. But as of right now, I've got Castillo, to sum up I've got Castillo, Javier, Burns, like we talked about, the Singer, then Ober, then Cabrera would be my next 3 pitchers I would consider. Seattle I have as number 1. I will have exposure to the Miami, Colorado game, mostly in the form of 2 or 3 mans. And then I will definitely have a full stack or more of the Detroit Kansas City game.
Yeah. So this lineup is not finished. See, I could talk about this one because I'm leaving the spot open or whatever. Seattle's, and then you get to play with Singer and Cabrera. Screw all the pitchers, and screw Miami. How about that? Like them apples? Yeah. So I like Seattle. I like Miami. And then Boston and Atlanta would be my next group. And then as far as pitching goes, the best ones are, like I said, Castillo, Javier, and Burns. I guess if you did play Burns and Javier together, you're costing yourself something because only one of them can get the win. I guess that might be, I don't know, worth not.
Yeah, on a bigger slate, I would worry more. I don't think I'd worry as much on this slate, personally.
So I think that screwing around with some kind of construction like this could be a good way to lose. But listen, one thing that's cool about this is that if you played a lineup like this and you zero it out like your salary, I promise you that no one else could have it that has the better pitchers, because you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So that's like when you ask, what are you saving? What are you getting by playing these guys? I mean, when you spend up for all these guys, you know, that's one thing you can do. And we didn't talk about, at least you talked about Kansas City more than I did. You know what? Hold on one second. Hold on. Hello.
Okay. Yeah. Here we go. So
good enough. Perfect.
Yeah. All right. So sorry, what was your last thing?
No, I was just going to say that you talked about the Kansas City game more than I did. And as I'm like kind of filling in these lineups, I mean, play Perez and play Bobby Witt with impunity if you pay down at pitching.
Yeah.
That is one thing that paying down at pitching will do for you. And like you said, I mean, if I play, you know, stuff like Ober and Cabrera and guys like that, I can get away with them scoring 13, 14 points. As long as Castillo and Burns don't get like 40, you know what I mean? Like that,
yeah.
That well, obviously if they do that, then you have a problem. But if they get like 25, 26, I'll live with 15 out of these other two guys if these other hitters can go off. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but that's kind of my leans. Is once again, Miami best stack, but not using the top pitchers with them. Boston, Seattle, Atlanta, and then those three top pitchers with Ober and Cabrera as my pivots.
Mm-hmm.
And second.
That makes sense to me. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you live at 6 Eastern, and we don't need to do the 6:20 thing. I think it's a 7:20 start, but with baseball, there's not a whole lot left to fill out, except for, you know, and we can answer any questions in the premium chat about the.
6 o'clock's perfect, right?
Yeah, and I'll touch on some thoughts about the NBA tonight. I'm not playing heavy right now. I've kind of gotten through a little bit of a losing streak, so I'm kind of just pulling off and taking the fact that it was a profitable year and moving on. But I'm definitely going to pay attention. I'll definitely throw a few into the million to one shots. Good luck, everybody. And